people in the ghetto catching hell. Now tell the racists, sufferers don't care about color. Sufferers don't care about race. Sufferers don't care who migrate from where or who living in who place. Sufferers don't care who from country. Sufferers don't care who from some. Sufferers only want to hear where their food coming from. Get up early next morning, go down in the 10 days yard. You see so much different race, so much different people line up with the ID card. Or visit my village called Tobago, where they get no water for years. So much different race, so much different color, with a bucket sit down shedding tears. Now tell the racists, sufferers don't care about color. Sufferers don't care about race. Sufferers don't care who migrate from where or who living in who place. Sufferers don't care who from country. Sufferers don't care who from town. Sufferers only want to hear what will their food coming from. Visit the General Hospital, and I know that you would be shocked to see so much different race of people line up waiting on one dock, or pay a visit to the AIDS ward where they find no cure as yet. People don't know the race. Yeah, remember the color. All they know is that they're facing death. Now tell the racists, sufferers don't care about what? Sufferers don't care about race. Sufferers don't care who migrate from where or who living in who place. What? Sufferers don't care who from country. What? Sufferers don't care who from town. Sufferers only want to hear where their food coming from. Someone who has something that they want to protect. So they will always keep on in the race talk till the day of the death. But poor people, we have nothing. Don't know where the next meal coming from. So I want you to go and to tell all the races, suffering makes us one. Tell the racists, sufferers don't care about color. Sufferers don't care about race. Sufferers don't care about race. No, sufferers don't care who migrate from where or who living in who place. Tell the racists, sufferers don't care who from country. Sufferers don't care who from town. Sufferers only want to hear what It have a whole set of people, don't care what. For people in the ghetto catching hell. Now tell the racists, sufferers don't care about color. Sufferers don't care about race. Sufferers don't care who migrate from where or who living in who place. Sufferers don't care who from country. Sufferers don't care who from some. Sufferers only want to hear where their food coming from. Barrow, where they get no war, stuff for years. So much different race, so much different color, with a bucket sit down shedding tears. Now tell the racists, sufferers don't care about color. Sufferers don't care about race. Sufferers don't care from some. Sufferers want to hear what with that food coming from. Visit the General Hospital. I know that you would be shocked to see so much different race of people line up waiting on one dock or pay a visit to the AIDS ward where they find no cure as yet. People don't know the race, yeah, remember the color. All they know is that they're facing death. Now tell the racists, sufferers don't care about what? Sufferers don't care about race. Sufferers don't care who migrate from where or who living in who place. What? Sufferers don't care who from country. What? Sufferers don't care who from some. Sufferers only want to hear where their food coming from. A racist is someone who has something that they want to protect. So they will always keep on talking the race talk till the day of the death. But poor people, we have nothing. Don't know where the next meal coming from. So I want you to go and to tell all the races, suffering makes us one. Tell the racists, sufferers don't care about color. Sufferers don't care about race. Sufferers don't care about race. No, sufferers don't care who migrate from where or who living in who place. Tell the racists, sufferers don't care. Sufferers don't care who from some. Sufferers
Yes, indeed. Of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry. Yes, I know that I too miss you as well. Of course, I know that it is in the spirit of reciprocity. But of course, it was due to circumstances beyond my control. I had to take a protracted or extended sabbatical, having regard, of course, to the amount of energy not only would have been put into this program on a nightly basis and a daily basis, as far as the ground report is concerned, and of course, assisting others in doing, of course, my own work, since, of course, I have to make a living as well. But certainly, there is a saying that, of course, man does dead, walk though dead. So, of course, staying true to that philosophy, I thought it was important, of course, to take an extra day or two so that I could recuperate and I could, of course, re-energize, so to speak. Because, of course, as some people would say, if you are in the desert, you become dehydrated. Well, of course, using that analogy, then there is a necessity to become rehydrated. And, of course, from, of course, tonight's program and the way how we started, you would have recognized that. Because, of course, sufferers are not concerned with where the money comes from. Sufferers are not concerned with, of course, who is a racist or what color of skin you are, or, of course, how big your house is or how expensive your car is. What they want, of course, is to put what? Bread and butter, food on their tables. And once that can happen, then, of course, they are generally comforted. Of course, as a human being and as Maslow rules of, should I say, a law of hierarchical needs, then, of course, the basics will be food, shelter, clothing, and then we move elsewhere. I'm seeing, of course, a blurred on YouTube. I trust that that is temporary, and it is as a result of my system here and not yours, because I'm seeing a kind of blurry presentation in terms of the video. I trust that will not be affecting you, but it's probably, I'm hoping it is in studio. That being as it may, and whether you're getting that or not, of course, what we have tonight is, of course, a bumper program having regard. Yes, in the life of this program is 2 days too much, far less to get a regular holiday on a Friday. That being as it may, let me abreast you, let me update you as to what the situation is tonight. Of course, I will be looking at Tobago. Tobago, you have a very special program tonight, because you see, once don't forget, well, people don't forget as well in terms of their experiences. And of course, we can examine, therefore, what were the circumstances that led to the demise of the PNM in Tobago. I think it is instructive, it is important for Trinidad to understand why it is that Tobago has gone against the PNM, and that the PNM is now, of course, bad news, that the people of Tobago see PNM as they hate the people that they love to hate, simply because of what transpired. Well, there must be an antecedent, there must be circumstances that would have led to that, and of course we will examine critical tonight. That being as it may, let me say in no uncertain terms, once again, of course, we are on YouTube and we are on Facebook. First and foremost, of course, the number to call for tonight, of course, is 337-6940, 337-6940. We continue, of course, to take your calls early, late, it doesn't matter, in between. And, of course, for our Christmas hamper initiative, 336-6. 594 3, of course, the number to call for our hamper and, of course, Christmas initiative, 336-6594. I know that many of you are struggling, many of you have, of course, concerns for your own welfare, but certainly there are others out there that are even more desperate in need. I mean, it is abject need, it's abject poverty out there. Courtesy, of course, an administration that clearly, as Kamala Prasad Bissessa said last week, Monday, if it was her and she was prime minister, she would have donned her Christmas outfit and would have been all over the country sharing Christmas greetings, gifts, and of course cheers. So at least the children, particularly in poor circumstance, would at least for one day of the year, for one season of the year, feel comforted, feel comfortable, feel a sense of belonging, a sense of that somebody cares. And of course, Kamla Prasad Bisesa would have been the person who would have been engaged in that kind of activities. And there is no need for us to speculate. There is no need, of course, for us to say that maybe or it might have been. The fact is that over the 5 years of Kamla Prasad Bisesa between 2010 and 2015, that has been her modus operandi. That has been her almost raison d'etre, her reason for, of course, being prime minister, to share and to, of course, deal with the concerns and the issues of the people. And, of course, the very nature and the very, what I consider to be appellation, the very name, you could call it a pseudonym if you wish, but of course, whether it's a false name or a genuine name, the fact of the matter is that the proof of the pudding is in the action. And what we have seen is that around Christmas time, we have, of course, a reduction, in fact, a taking off, whether it be flour, whether it be sugar, whether it be salt, whether it be rice, because those are the basic things that make the Trinidad and Tobago, what I say, Christmas, what we know it to be traditionally, and therefore that level of sensitivity. And I'm sure if she was in office now, having regarded to the amount of money that has passed through this government's Rowley and his miscreants' hands, like a huge, maybe a truckload of salts, and of course a river to, of course, swallow that. She would have been able, of course, and I'm sure she would have contemplated reduction even beyond the question of VAT, taking off VAT, but the actual commodities themselves would have been reduced. And of course, I have no brief, but I have to be fair, and I have to be just, and I have to be realistic. And I would have seen, and I would not have been surprised if Kamla Prasad Bisesa was wrong, having regard to what transpired in COVID. Not that COVID would have been the results of what we got, because that is a figment of Dr. Rowley and their imagination, that they performed well, and therefore try, of course, as per usual, to manifest that illusion by bringing, of course, the head of WHO here to confirm the nonsense. I wonder how much he was paid by way of transportation, etc., in order to get him here, so that Rowley and they can, of course, project that illusion to us. We know anything they touch is always a disaster, and therefore COVID was no different. $22 billion. $22 billion, a parallel health system, and you have over 5,000 persons being, of course, losing their lives as a consequence of that particular disease or pandemic. And mind you, when you look at what has happened in Grenada, St. Vincent, in spite of the smaller population, but when one looks at what limited resources they would have had using the same hospitals to, of course, treat with both victims of COVID and the normal services that the medical facilities here would have provided. We know it's chalk and cheese. We know that they would have performed admirably, because no one, and certainly not over 5,000 persons were supposed to die from COVID, having regard to the expenditure of $22 billion available to this administration, and at the same time having a parallel health system, of course. And once again, they will not, so we have to do it as a people. We thank Kamla Prasad Bisesa for having at least the Kuva Hospital, that was the epicenter of the response to as far as the health system is concerned, to that pandemic. And even when the traditional system was deployed, and they put, of course, things like tents outside the general hospitals, whether it be the Port of Spain, the Arima, or the San Fernando, or what we are seeing is people dying on stretchers or on seats in those tents that they, and of course at Mount Hope, on those tents, or in those tents that they would have provided, even though they said they had this parallel system, which of course was deployed through, of course, the Cuba Hospital, the closed down Petrotrin Hospital, the hospital at Pointe-a-Pierre, and then of course the Cuba, not the Cuba, but certainly the hospital up at that, what I consider to be a beautiful, nestled in the northern range. Yes, I'm talking about the Cora Hospital. All of them were deployed, and yet still 5,000 deaths. Why? Because of the incompetence, impotence, the abuse of resources, the non-accountability, and their inability, of course, to manage the COVID in the way that one would have expected with that kind of resources available to them. Once again, the Rowley administration has proven to be a failure in that regard. Let us not waste time, and let us not, of course, fool ourselves and become, of course, complacent and stooges for their misinformation, disinformation, and their political grandstanding, and their incompetence, their impotence, and their inability to manage the affairs of the country in the way that one would have expected with the largesse that was at their disposal. We are not going to talk the economy as yet. We are not going to talk about the sea bridge. We are not going to talk about, of course, the failures as far as these matters are concerned, including, of course, the petrochemical, as well as the oil and the gas industries, and of course the situation with reasoning why they have to, of course, increase electricity, water rates, and we can go on and on, notwithstanding, of course, the implementation next year of property tax, and we can go on and on. No, what we are going to do, of course, is to further examine the fact as to why we must be in a state of total readiness, one, and two, absolute and total recalcitrant to a government that clearly has lost its way, and that it is toxic to Trinidad and Tobago. Its toxicity has no limitation, and therefore it is the bane, it is the tragedy, it is the treachery of Trinidad and Tobago, and we must, of course, as a people, not only recognize that, but to respond appropriately. And the only response we know in a democracy, because this is still a democracy, in spite of Rowley's attempt to turn it into a autocracy or a dictatorship, but we as a people have resisted that vehemently, not violently, but vehemently. He, of course, have caused violence to be visited on the people when, of course, tear gas and the police locking up people because they said in non-certain terms, and rightly so, that Rowley must go, the PNM must go, his cabinet must go, and they are a bunch of criminal conspirators who, of course, should be tried for treason. But I wouldn't go there. I would say that they should be, of course, be facing the criminal justice and the civil justice systems in order to for us not only to gain justice but to recoup some of the resources that they would have stolen over the last 8 years. We're talking about $190 billion in the hands of these miscreants, and of course they cannot account for it when we look at all the circumstance that they have, of course, issued and exhibited on the people, but to no avail. Once again, of course, the number to call, only WhatsApp, the number to call 337-6940. You can call at your leisure, and of course, don't forget, we don't accept anybody verbs and yellow verbs and so on. No, this is about Trinidad and Tobago, and it is about saving Trinidad and Tobago in, if it means, in our own dialect. A pleasant good night. Welcome. A pleasant good night. Welcome. That's a good night to you as well. Yes, loud and clear, my friend. Loud and clear. Loud and clear. Loud and clear. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right. So Another one has City Dust.
Yes. That's the third. I think two the day before. Yeah. The second. Oh, so it's one before on the.
I told him being careful on that highway. More people going to die.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
These people don't have signage. They don't have signage telling me about the young about the head. We have to go on the man went straight across the young about them. From the time that I have to cut. That's why I have to cut the edge around about the other side. And you cut when you have put on the other side of the road. And that part of the road is completely.
Right.
And then Kennedy, where I live in America, born about the international standards. And when the president come and then they put the signage in Gorokonda. And when they see the young color and it's party. This kind of practice signage, they give them people that practice signage. Then they billboard signage, they give people, they have no signage telling it, they don't know about coming up ahead. None. Because they're going to against the day. No indication telling around about that.
Wow.
But those people going about.
Yes, indeed. And of course, as the caller rightly said, they are going to pat themselves on the shoulder and use some phantasmagorical stories, and of course, it gives some very, what I consider to be highfalutin terminology, but it's part of par for the course, so to speak. That is part of their attempt, of course, to hoodwink, to deceive, and to pretend that the rest of us don't know what they're talking about, and that therefore they could come with that level of hogwash and diatribe and believe that we are going to, on a continuous and sustained basis, accept the nonsense that they're talking. And all of that is cacophonous babblings. All of that is ambulatory orations of a deceptive nature, all of which self-conceiving in order, of course, to promote an agenda that, of course, is not in keeping, is not congruent, it is not consistent with the reality of Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, that particular death on that stretch of highway between Point and San Fernando that was recently opened. Yes, the concern and of course the young man who would have met his death is a DJ, well known to us on the ground report, and of course connected to the 104.7 and the DJ team. In fact, on Saturday, it was he was there, and then of course next thing, he is no longer here because of lack of signage on the highway. Nothing Rowley and they can do is complete or is in a real sense total so as to achieve its objective. You don't construct a highway to kill people. You can have a safe and efficient and efficacious movement of commuters where the highway would have been connected to, or any connector roads to it, so that you make it more effective. For example, he has not spoken about the extension of the highway to where it was ended under the UNC administration, and we here told you that it was supposed to go beyond the bay. And what will happen is that those areas in this very southern part, the very southern part of Trinidad, will now be captured because they are hitherto, up until this time, not exposed to the kind of infrastructure to facilitate agriculture, because those are agricultural communities. And for years, they have not been given the kind of infrastructure to, of course, produce more and to, of course, get their goods to market. And so earn a good living as everybody else, but there is a necessity of that now, having regard to supply difficulties as far as the traditional source externally of the food that we consume, and we have a responsibility not only to grow what we eat, but also eat what we grow, and that by itself is a particular adapted and adaptable, because they are adaptable, and so will be able now to accept the locally produced items, but it must be of the quality, it must be of the standard, and it must be of the quantity, and it must be at the price that we can get. We can feel comfortable in, of course, consuming local, but you must start somewhere, and one of the functions of that highway was to, of course, open up the agricultural holdings along these most southern parts of the country, so that, of course, the agriculturalists or the farmers and those who are engaged in farming will be able, of course, to feel much more comforted and get their produce to market expeditiously, rather than having it stay under the plantations, and then, of course, because of its limited lifespan, because they are perishable items in the main, the farmer end up losing, and as a consequence, we as consumers not getting the relevant local nutrients or nutrition that is required for us to be, of course, let's say, well-rounded human beings. But that is another matter that we will look at. I only raised it because the caller called about it, having regard to the person who was, of course, who was the victim of that accident. Let us, of course, I want to take you to Tobago quickly, because as you know, Dr. Rowley has been boasting about his governments, and he in particular indicating that he bent over backwards for Tobago. He bent backwards over Tobago, and you know the irony, and it is laughable, it is ludicrous, that if you bent over backwards for Tobago and you gave them what they wanted or their needs were at minimum, how come they tell you get the hell out? How come it's 14-1, Rowley? How you bend over backwards? And tonight we will prove the lies, the double lies that Rowley would have told to Tobago, and that is why the Tobagonians being a so-called Awi boy. A so-called Awi boy got jettisoned from Tobago. And as Prime Minister, that is unprecedented. That is unprecedented. No matter what, Robinson would have, in spite of how Trinidad may have hated him, Tobago stood at his side right down to the end. But here it is. Before the end of his first term, and obviously the people of Tobago rejected Rowley as an Awi boy. That speaks volumes as to what the reality is. And therefore we must, of course, engage in a kind of assessment of Dr. Rowley and why it is that the Tobagonians have, of course, see him as a danger to them, as opposed, of course, to an asset. He's a danger to them. Yeah, and only he, of course, as he alone knows, will try to hoodwink you and I, and telling us that he bent over backwards to assist the Tobagonians, and that he ought not to be given the kind of treatment possibly that he is getting now from the Tobagonians, and of course hoping that somehow he will get back into favor with them, and as a consequence they will vote for him. Let's take let's take an assessment of what has transpired really in Tobago and why Tobagonians hate Rowley in the way that they have demonstrated in that 14-1 scenario. I mean, it is pathetic. It is almost obscene to know that a Tobagonian is hated in the way that they hate Rowley, and of course clearly has demonstrated that they do not care for a PNM administration, particularly under Rowley. Let us, of course, listen to Rowley and why that has happened. I want to, of course, start by telling you that the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower, yes, we're going back there, Tobagonians. If you didn't know, you will know tonight. The dual and the duplicitous, and I use this in the context of his speech. What he told you was two different accounts he gave. He gave one in Tobago as to the acquisition of the Star and the Ocean Flower. And then he came back at a joint select committee and gave a different story in Trinidad. And I want Rowley and the PNM to know, and his cabinet to know, it is the discerning Tobagonians and their discernibility and that their knowledge and their understanding of that duplicitous and that conniving and deceitful conduct that caused Rowley and the PNM, a PNM that is in government, and a government that has a prime minister from Tobago, and a government in presence, but yet still they rejected the PNM in Tobago and its leader from Tobago. That speaks volumes, people, and we must understand it for what it is, and we must accept it for what it is. That is the reality. Let's go straight, of course, to his explanation in Tobago first, as to the how he acquired the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower. Listen to this phantasmagorical story. You wouldn't believe a big man is capable of engaging in such deceptions.
Who brought the note to cabinet? When was this note brought to cabinet? Did anyone presently at that meeting object? And can you present a copy or somebody of that lease to the media to see for approval? I'll start with that.
There are a lot of questions in there. Let me just back up and explain to you how this thing goes. There's a governance structure in this country. And if you don't observe the governance structure, that itself becomes another issue. At the level of the cabinet, there's a minister of transport appointed by the Prime Minister. As part of the portfolio of that minister is the Port Authority, Minister of Transport. The Port Authority falls under the Minister of Transport. That Port Authority is run by a board appointed by the cabinet, and that board utilizes the expertise of a management. So if you go from below, you have management reporting to the board reporting to the minister reporting to the cabinet.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Mark Besant.
Let's go again.
CCN TV6 News. Just on the point of the Ocean Flower, I just wanted to find out, did the cabinet agree to lease these vessels, and on what basis? Who brought the note to cabinet? When was this note brought to cabinet? Did anyone presently at that meeting object? And can you present a copy or somebody of that lease to the media to see for approval? I'll start with that.
There are a lot of questions in there. Let me just back up and explain.
Now remember, he is being interviewed in Tobago. on that occasion. And the question is, with respect to the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower, you will be amazed still, even though you ought not to be, but the level of and depth of lies that this man is capable of manufacturing. So the question is clear. I don't think I need to of course, comment on that. But listen to him and his process and what he told Tobagonians.
You know, this thing goes. There's a governance structure in this country. And if you don't observe the governance structure, that itself becomes another issue. At the level of the cabinet, there's a minister of transport appointed by the Prime Minister. As part of the portfolio of that minister is the Port Authority, Minister of Transport. The Port Authority falls under the Minister of Transport. That Port Authority is run by a board appointed by the cabinet, and that board utilizes the expertise of a management. So if you go from below, you have management reporting to the board reporting to the minister reporting to the cabinet, and cabinet taking the decision. Okay, let's go to the questions you asked me about what I can provide to you. I am not, as I sit here now, able to provide to you much of what you asked for because I don't really have those details in front of me. But I can tell you that the board would have been guided by its expertise. The board would have reported to the minister. At the level of the ministry, a cabinet note would have been prepared based on what would have been accomplished by the board, because the board will have to make a case to the minister, and the minister will have to make a case to the cabinet, because it requires cabinet approval for the ministry to authorize that a contract be entered into. All of that was done through a cabinet note, which came to the cabinet identifying the vessel that would be contracted. That is what is normal, and that is what has happened.
Listen carefully to this man.
In the attempt to bring the Tobago problem to acceptability as quickly as possible, as I said earlier in my presentation, I was on standby and available to expedite the process so that time being of the essence, that the port could move as quickly as possible. And once I was approached that my decision was required, I was prepared to give it, and I gave it on a weekend, Friday afternoon. And once I gave that, to ensure that time, valuable time, to shorten the suffering in Tobago, that it doesn't wait for another week of cabinet. Cabinet meets on a Thursday and confirms on the following Thursday. But once I, as Prime Minister, gave the authority to proceed, which was on, I'm advised that it was Friday the 16th, then whatever else you're asking there would flow from that.
What I'm asking is that, would you not...
Wait. Don't be confused. Do not be confused for one moment. Let me disabuse any confusion that you may have. In the first instance, Rowley said in Tobago, among Tobagonians, his compatriots, that the process is to acquire those boats, the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower, asked by Mark Vassant, that listen, Rowley responded by saying there is a process, a governance process, where of course the executive of the port find the boat, and then of course it goes to the PS. The PS then of course gives a cabinet note, and that cabinet note is taken by the minister to the cabinet, and then of course the approval is given or the non-approval is given. Here Rowley now, before a joint same subject, the same matter that was asked of him, but in this case he is saying nothing about that process. He said that he gave instructions and cabinet wasn't going to meet, but he loved the people of Tobago so much that he gave instructions before cabinet was able to see it. And he's telling us that when he speaks about cabinet give instructions and cabinet of course authorize and so on, it's not he the dictator that is a total dominant factor in the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, and that is why those members of his cabinet will have to be also subjected to criminal investigations because they are yes men and yes women. Let's go back to that part of it where he was in the Joint Select Committee and hear him talking a different story to the appropriate procedure that he mentioned in Tobago. And I suspect why he did give the appropriate procedure, you see, because of the public service, Reginald Dumas is still alive and must have been in the meeting as well. And so he couldn't lie and tell them that he gave the minister and NIDCO, the company that was supposed to enter into the lease arrangement, authorization without the cabinet approval. You want to say without, or put another way, before cabinet approval. That is what he did. And he told Tobagonians one thing and then come in Trinidad and say he's the first prime minister that has come before a joint select committee and lying through his teeth. Or maybe he spoke the truth there, but one of the accounts must be a lie, and the one in Tobago, one has to say it was a lie, and you could understand why Tobagonians, I understand why you have such an animosity, such a hatred, and such a contempt, and such evil thoughts for this man who clearly is absolutely wicked and self-serving, and we only have to look at Landate attempting to deprive you of a hospital at a time when you really needed it. But he wanted the material from there for him and his wife's project at Landate. Let us not waste time with that. Let's see him again, so you get it clear. One thing in Tobago, and in Trinidad he says something different. Do not be fooled, and do not for one moment believe that Dr. Rowley is capable of speaking the truth, unless, of course, it is in circumstances where it is to cover up another lie, as he did in this instance.
Well, because I don't really have those details in front of me. But I can tell you that the board would have been guided by its expertise. The board would have reported to the minister. At the level of the ministry, a cabinet note would have been prepared based on what would have been accomplished by the board, because the board will have to make a case to the minister, and the minister will have to make a case to the cabinet, because it requires cabinet approval for the ministry to authorize that a contract be entered into. All of that was done through a cabinet note, which came to the cabinet identifying the vessel that would be contracted. That is what is normal, and that is what has happened in this situation. In the attempt to bring the Tobago problem to acceptability as quickly as possible, as I said earlier in my presentation, I was on standby and available to expedite the process, so time being of the essence, that the port could move as quickly as possible. And once I was approached that my decision was required, I was prepared to give it, and I gave it on a weekend, Friday afternoon. And once I gave that, to ensure that time, valuable time, to shorten the suffering in Tobago, that it doesn't wait for another week of cabinet. Cabinet meets on a Thursday and confirms on the following Thursday. But once I, as Prime Minister, gave the authority to proceed, which was on, I'm advised that it was Friday the 16th, then whatever else you're asking there would flow from that.
What I'm asking is that, would you not agree, before you grant approval for anything, in this instance, to give the Ministry of Works and Transport the go-ahead to sign off on the party charter agreement, you would conduct some due diligence
I am always advised in matters of this nature by persons whose job it is to advise me. And I would not give, even though I'm saying that I would give approval, it is, I have to justify myself, to myself, that the approval is worthy of being given. And as a matter of fact, when I gave the authority to go forward on the understanding that it will be ratified by the cabinet, it was because I was satisfied that the relevant authority advising me was on board, and that the documents going to the cabinet will have the relevant.
Yeah.
And
Listen to him again.
as a matter of fact, when I gave the authority to go forward on the understanding that it will be ratified by the cabinet, it was because I was satisfied that the relevant authority advising me was on board, and that the documents going to the cabinet will have the relevant.
But he said something different
by the board
in Tobago.
because the
Listen
board
to
will
him.
have to make a case to the minister, and the minister will have to make a case to the cabinet, because it requires cabinet approval for the ministry to authorize that a contract be entered into. All of that was done through a cabinet note which came to the cabinet identifying the vessel that would.
Just imagine that. Just imagine that. Blatant lie. Tobagonians, you are justified in your conduct and your response to this monolithic, mendacious, his prevarications knows no limit, and to come and insult the nation's intelligence in the way that he has. Two different bifurcated stories about the same thing always, and has become stereotypical of this man. We saw him when he gave us about 3 or 4 stories about the closure of Petrotrin, 3 or 4 stories about his intervention in the Police Service Commission shortlist that included Gary Griffith, about 5 different versions of the sandals, the fiasco, debacle, about 16 different stories, and an unlimited amount, of course, of talk, all of which are pure hogwash, designed to deceive and to hoodwink and to, of course, fool the people into some kind of stupor, and that they will go back and vote for that level of dotishness and that level of evil that is Keith Christopher Rowley and this PNM. Tobagonians, you have done well. And it will be a tragedy if Trinidadians have not learned from your experience and your response to Rowley and his group of criminals who have commandeered and are the bane and the existential danger to Trinidad and Tobago as a society, as a democracy, as an economy. Let's hear Rowley once again in his bifurcated double talk. In Tobago says one thing, and in Trinidad he says something else, and want us to trust him, and telling us that he comes before us when after he goes to some jaunt abroad, as if that is significant. What is significant is the proof. When we ask you for the documentation, you cannot tell us that it is privilege. You cannot tell us that it is, of course, under the freedom of information exception. You cannot tell us that you sign a non-disclosure agreement simply because you have lied too often, and therefore nobody believes you, nobody believes your ministers, nobody believes your cabinet. No, everybody knows that you are a lame duck government. Everybody knows that you are ashamed to lie down, but everybody knows as well that all you have to make a serious jail. All of you, for what you have betrayed the population on. Let's hear it again. Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower. The relevant question given, and he cannot answer anyone. He doesn't have the documents before him. But he went to Tobago to address the question of the sea bridge because it was so desperate. The Tobagonians lost their businesses, were facing starvation. Yes, starvation. They were facing that as well because of the lack of material getting up there on a timely basis, and the replacement boats. He even put a barge there that when people got their housing and their construction material up there, particularly steel, it was devalued, had to be devalued by the exposure to the salt water that barge would have attracted, simply because it is a barge too close to the foam and the breeze, that when, of course, as it moves through the water and displacing water, you have foam, and that, of course, is carried in the wind, and the wind will go and settle. Well, the wind will contain, of course, the salt water, the salt, and the salt, of course, will, of course, settle on the items. That is what has happened. Well, we can say what you want.
Good afternoon.
Listen to the question again.
Investigative journalist from CC and TV6 News. Just on the point of the Ocean Flower, I just wanted to find out, did the Cabinet agree to lease these vessels, and on what basis? Who brought the note to Cabinet? When was this note brought to Cabinet? Did anyone presently at that meeting object? And can you present a copy or somebody of that lease to the media to see for approval? I'll start with that.
There are a lot of questions in there. Let me just back up and explain to you how this thing goes. There's a governance structure in this country. And if you don't observe the governance structure, that itself becomes another issue. At the level of the cabinet, there's a minister of transport appointed by the Prime Minister. As part of the portfolio of that minister is the Port Authority, Minister of Transport. The Port Authority falls under the Minister of Transport. That Port Authority is run by a board appointed by the cabinet, and that board utilizes the expertise of a management. So if you go from below, you have management reporting to the board reporting to the minister reporting to the cabinet, and cabinet taking the decision. Okay, let's go to the questions you asked me about what I can provide to you. I am not, as I sit here now, able to provide to you much of what you asked for because I don't really have those details in front of me. But I can tell you,
you went there to talk to Tobagonians, eh?
Would have been guided by its expertise. The board would have reported to the minister. At the level of the ministry, a cabinet note would have been prepared based on what would have been accomplished by the board, because the board will have to make a case to the minister, and the minister will have to make a case to the cabinet, because it requires cabinet approval for the ministry to authorize that a contract be entered into. All of that was done through a cabinet note which came to the cabinet identifying the vessel that would be contracted. That is what is normal, and that is what has happened in this situation. In the attempt to bring the Tobago problem to
a different story altogether now.
As quickly as possible. As I said
before I joined Select Committee of Parliament,
I was on standby and available to expedite the process so that time being of the essence, that the port could move as quickly as possible. And once I was approached that my decision was required, I was prepared to give it, and I gave it on a weekend, a Friday afternoon, and once I gave that to ensure that time, valuable time, to shorten the suffering interview, that he doesn't wait for another week of cabinet. Cabinet meets on a Thursday and confirms on the following Thursday. But once I, as Prime Minister, gave the authority to proceed, which was on, I'm advised that it was Friday the 16th, then whatever else you're asking there would flow from that.
What I'm asking is that, would you not agree before you grant approval for anything in this instance to give the Ministry of Works and Transport the go-ahead to sign off on the party charter agreement? You would conduct some due diligence?
I am always advised in matters of this nature by persons whose job it is to advise me. And I would not give, even though I'm saying that I would give approval, it is, I have to justify myself, to myself, that the approval is worthy of being given. And as a matter of fact, when I gave the authority to go forward, on the understanding
making himself an ass,
it will be ratified by the cabinet, it was because I was satisfied that the relevant authority advising me was on board, and that the documents going to the cabinet will have the relevant.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Mark Vasant, investigative journalist from CC and TV6 News.
So people,
Just on the point of the
I think we have heard enough
I just wanted to find out, did Cabinet agree
for the
to
people
list
to be angry in
Good afternoon,
Tobago.
Prime Minister Mark Vasant,
But let us
investigative
look
journalist
at
from CC and TV6 News.
what are
Just
some
on
of the
point of
other
ocean flower. I just wanted to find out,
factors
did Cabinet agree to lease these vessels? And
that will, of course, the people to hate
brought the
Rowley
note
so.
to Cabinet? When was this note brought to Cabinet? Did anyone presently at that meeting object? And
Some
can
other
you
factors.
present a copy or somebody of that lease?
Then, of course, them to hate him so.
Here to see for approval. I'll start with that.
There are a lot of questions in there. Let me just back up and explain to you how this thing goes. There's a governance structure in this country. And if you don't observe the governance structure, that itself becomes another issue. At the level of the cabinet,
Let us look at some
there's a
other factors
minister
that will
of
cause
transport
the people of
appointed by the Prime
Tobago
Minister.
to hate the Awi boy,
As
the
part of
so-called
the
Awi boy,
portfolio of that
in
minister
the way
is the
that they
Port Authority,
have demonstrated
Minister
in
of Transport.
non-certain terms,
the Port Authority
as they rejected him
falls
out,
under the
out of
Minister
hand.
of Transport.
Out of hand, the
That Port
people.
Authority is run by a board
Rejected him out of
appointed by
hand.
the cabinet. And that board utilizes the expertise of a management. So if you go from below, you have management reporting to the board reporting to the minister reporting to the cabinet, and cabinet taking a decision. Okay, let's go to the questions you asked me about what I can provide to you. I am not, as I sit here now, able to provide to you much of what you asked for because I don't really have those details in front of me. But I can tell you that the board would have been guided by its expertise. The board would have reported to the minister, and the minister gave the authority to proceed, which was on, I'm advised that it was Friday the 16th, then whatever else you're asking there would flow from that.
What I'm asking is that, would you not agree before you grant approval for anything in this instance to give the Ministry of Works and Transport the go-ahead to sign off on the party charter agreement? You would conduct some due diligence?
I am always advised in matters of this nature by persons whose job it is to advise me. And I would not give, even though I'm saying that I would give approval, it is, I have to justify myself, to myself, that the approval is worthy of being given. And as a matter of fact, when I gave the authority to go forward on the understanding that it will be ratified by the cabinet, it was because I was satisfied that the relevant authority advising me was on board, and that the documents going to the cabinet will have the relevant support for what I had done.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Mark Vasant, investigative journalist from CC and TV6 News. Just on the point of the ocean flower, I just wanted to find out, did Cabinet agree to lease these vessels, and on what basis? Who brought the note to Cabinet? When was this note brought to Cabinet? Did anyone presently at that meeting object? And can you present a copy or somebody of that lease to the media to see for approval? I'll start with that.
There are a lot of questions in there. Let me just back up and explain to you how this thing goes. There's a governance structure in this country. And if you don't observe the governance structure, that itself becomes another issue. At the level of the cabinet, there's a minister of transport. I have made it very clear.
I think we have exhausted that sufficiently, but let us get to the point where the sustained hatred for Dr. Rowley. You'll forgive me, I am putting things in place as we speak, so I am multitasking. So you would forgive me, but I think this is very important. Let us look at the final nail that was put in the Rowley coffin and the PNM coffin by the Tobagonians because of the level of dotishness and deception and evil that he has manifested in the form of lies and deceptions that clearly requires
a number of key ministers,
I should say, judicial and criminal investigations, because it is a question of misbehavior in public office. It's a question of deception, and of course it is a question of not acting in the best interest of the public. The public interest has been scuttled. It has been endangered, and so Rowley must not get away. He and his cabinet. Listen to this.
Doing that for the transition.
Listen to this one.
The people of Tobago.
Listen to this one. Oh, he loves Tobago, but listen to what transpired, because he is claiming that he did everything possible for Tobago and for Fali and they. Tobagonians, you better listen. You better become aware so that you do not make any kind of mistake. And in Trinidad, I admonish and beg and beseech, listen carefully. Listen to this evil man.
Subsequent to the election in Tobago, which brought about a change of administration, as the senior politician in the country, leading the premier political party in the country, my party was defeated in Tobago, summarily dismissed from office after 2 decades of service. We took that in stride as par for the course. And I personally led the government's response to the transition in Tobago. I personally led that. The very first thing I did was to go to Tobago with a large delegation of ministers, a number of key ministers, Attorney General, Minister of Finance, Minister of Works, Minister of Tourism, and invited this new administration, which was full of young people, all of them inexperienced, invited them to sit down and assisted them with how the ministries function and what is required from the central government, what is required from them. And we spent half a day together, quietly and civilly, doing that for the transition, for the benefit of the people of Tobago. Subsequent to that, I gave instructions at the level of the cabinet that there are people who from time to time will seek to bait you into confrontation with the Tobago House of Assembly. No minister of this government is to get into any confrontation with anybody in the Tobago House of Assembly or its administration. If there are difficulties, the difficulties will be identified and will be dealt with in a civil and authorized manner.
Notwithstanding the public utterances from the Minister of Finance and his Tobagonian colleagues in the Parliament, as mentioned earlier, the calculations reveal that the THA is owed a total of 166.4 million in approved parliamentary allocation that have not been transferred to the THA.
This is for the period 2017 to 2023. Chief Secretary Fali Augustine noted that it is a matter for which he has been in communication with the Minister of Finance for the past 2 years. But,
Madam Presiding Officer, the time for futile talking has expired. We are now at an advanced stage in our preparation for two things. One, legal action, and two, preparation of the complaint to invoke the jurisdiction of the Dispute Resolution Commission.
The last time the Dispute Resolution Commission was convened was in 2001, determining that the THA should be allocated between 4.03% and 6% of the national budget, considering the population of Tobago and higher costs of living. Meanwhile, the THA requested $4.54 billion from central government, but was allocated only $2.585 billion. This shortfall affects various aspects of the THA's expected expenditure.
Now, question to you. Does that look as though that Prime Minister from Tobago bending over backwards to accommodate Tobagonians? Well, there is more. There is more to show once again. He tried to deceive the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and Trinidadians must take note. And I'm talking here about along the east-west corridor from Diego Martin in the west. His seat must be in jeopardy. Rowley's seat must be in jeopardy. And all of the Diego Martin seats, and all of the Port of Spain South and the Port of Spain North, and all of the Lavantills. You have a duty and responsibility to protect yourself, and to, of course, generate the courage and the motivation and the stick-to-itiveness and the resolve to get rid of this albatross.
2023, or last fiscal, 60 million to fund URP, as in to pay the workers, but only 18 million allocated in this fiscal. And the figure is likely to go up for both CPEP and URP owing to the increase in the minimum wage.
From roads to funding for university students and various other projects, all are similarly underfunded. To address this, Augustine announced plans to increase the developmental budget from $260 million to $500 million.
We propose to suppress recurrent expenditure by 5% in the first instance and transfer the estimated $115 million from recurrent expenditure to finance development projects for fiscal 2024. We propose to deploy funds from the unspent balance account.
Unspent balances would be utilized to supplement CPEP and URP programs, while the suppressed recurrent expenditure would fund road improvement works and other projects, including the new Scarborough Secondary School.
And allow me to pause here, Madam Presiding Officer, to indicate that the budgetary allocation for a new Scarborough Secondary School for fiscal is $1 million, with $800,000 allocated for repairs to the current school. However, we are proposing to spend at least $3 million in this fiscal year for all the pre-construction works.
In the meantime, Augustine explains that they are hoping to suppress recurrent expenditure by implementing the following measures.
All new purchases of THA vehicles must be electric as far as possible. Review, manage, and contain discretionary expenditures. More deliberate efforts at reducing the electricity consumption operations.
Would you extend an olive branch to the Chief Secretary, Falia Augustine?
Listen to this one. This one is the greatest.
What you interpret Fali for? Fali have more problems than you can deal with. I have, again, I like to be understood for who I am and what I am.
You are not the boss of me nor this island. And so, Mr. Prime Minister, yes, it's correct that you are Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, but you are not Prime Minister of the Tobago House of Assembly. As a matter of fact, from the time you reach #1 Jerningham Street, your authority ends by the gate. And that is why I offered no apologies to the fact that the Prime Minister visit to the quarry was cancelled. Central government ain't own that. That is Tobago people own. And as a matter of fact, one of my elders, Mr. Hochoy Charles, made it his duty to point out to me that when that quarry was starting up, there was this young fella who was at National Quarries Board who came up and said, it's only rotten rock you have there. But the same man who said was rotten rock, he wanted to go and visit it today. Well, we will keep with rotten rock and you keep out our business.
Now, people, is that what Rowley said is the cordiality and the civility and the salubrious relationship between himself, having bent backwards and carry many of his ministers to talk to them? All of that is part and parcel of his histrionics and his theatrics. Never meant it. Most upset that having done the people evil and they rejected him, but knowing full well that 2 seats in Tobago is crucial. He then, of course, comes up with those platitudes in order, of course, to soak the Tobagonians. And while at the same time doing them evil because his words does not match his actions. Let's continue. And Fari clearly feeling the pinch because the people are suffering. So he wants to suffer Fari and them, but he wants to find a way to not suffer the people because it is on them, their votes. He depends in order to get those 2 seats. So here the contradiction, here the conflict, here the discombobulation that he has found himself in. In order for him, of course, to serve the people, he must go through Fali and they, or put at a minimal, Fali and them will know. So what they plan to do? They plan to take different ministries and go in Tobago as ministries, separate and apart from the THA and Fali and them, and execute projects. The very methodology that he opposed when Kamla Prasad Bisasande, when they had, of course, the Ministry of Tobago, and we had, of course, a doctor from Tobago as the minister in that particular ministry, and they were delivering material and delivering services across the board. But of course, in that particular case, you could see it was genuine because it was a genuine Tobago initiative and being augmented by an antagonistic PNM THA. Let's not waste time. That is a fact. And therefore, they got more done because of the THA then, the PNM THA under Kamla Prasad Bisesa and the functionality of the Tobago ministry that was devised and created by Kamla and they, of their quest and their need to be in power, would want to stymie the Tobagonians because the UNC was servicing the Tobago population well. They would want to, of course, to put spokes in their wheels. Something like what Rowley said. Rowley told the people of Tobago when, of course, there was, according to him, a boatload of food cards that came, and he told them, don't take it. And when, of course, he is on track, he's on record, when Christmas hampers were being distributed by Kamla, he told his constituents and his office workers, don't take any. And just as so, when, of course, the vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, he then told us, so we know he has a track record of putting people in danger for his own personal aggrandizement because he is all right. He could eat when he wants, he could travel when he wants, and he could do it at our expense. So when the AstraZeneca was available, he told us that he ain't going and beg for no vaccine. He gonna beg for no vaccine. I am talking about that scenario. I'm not talking about the efficacy or the requirement or the proven or disproved use of the vaccine. I'm talking about his attitude. His attitude was that he is going to beg for no vaccine. So if it was to save Trinidad and Tobago's life, he wasn't going there because that is a dishonorable thing. He preferred to buy, utilizing our money when he getting it free. That is the nature of the beast that we are talking about. And it is not just that alone. When Donald Trump ignored him and did not invite him to his mansion in Florida, when the Vincentian Prime Minister got a blind, the St. Lucian Prime Minister, the Jamaican Prime Minister, the Antiguan Prime Minister got a blind to go and talk with Trump on matters of not just COVID, but of development in post-COVID. Rowley was ignored, and his Rowley's comment is monumental, is significant to show the nature of this wicked man. Because he was not invited, he said that our foreign policy is not determined by a man inviting us to his home. But as soon as they accommodated him, you notice he want to go to America every minute. Every minute he wants to go. You couldn't believe it's the same man, because he was rejected because of the inferiority complex that he has and the criminal nature of the man and the fact that he cannot accept rejection. A man who is, of course, the epitome, or who is the quintessential candidate for rejection because of his nature, a criminal, a rapist, and a pedophile. That is what he is. And don't want to accept that and try to project onto others that he is not what we know he is. Understand that. So I'm making the point. I am making the point that he's a man of extreme convenience. And always so him. So when he is castigating Fari, even though he said that he loved them and he's from Tobago, etc. No. He won the seats and Tobagonians. I'm sure after today it would have been confirmed. Not only is that he wants to get, but you will never give it to them. I talk about he and the PNM again.
When they cannot get their way, then what they will do, they call the commissioner of police, whose balisé bloomers is showing. She balisé petticoat exposed, and she sent up another mad lady, and they will come and try to terrorize the elected members of the Tobago House of Assembly. But more than that, they find themselves in the houses of public servants whom we ain't even hire. People who are working for the theatre for over 10 years. And the relationship between Tobago and Trinidad has never been this low. We had Robinson versus Williams. The most Williams is suffer. Mrs. Williams on them.
That is Farley talking, eh? The head of the THA, the chief secretary, and Rowley just told us that he bent over backwards. But here, Farley, the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago, or the central government and THA, has never been so bad. But Rowley will try to give us a different reality that is a concoction of his pernicious imagination. His pernicious imagination, people.
And then pay them no money. They ain't get no salary. My father was in the bunch. We had Hochoy versus Pandey. We had to get a DRC to solve that one. We had Kamla versus Orville. And all kind of back and forth and trading of talks. And you Tobagonians came out and voted overwhelmingly against that. Ask Baines, he was part of them. Who lose? Right? And no, but we have never had a situation where the government of Trinidad and Tobago will use the machinations of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to come and terrorize people because they simply do not agree with them, because we voted them out of office.
What I find worrisome and very disappointing is that the Chief Secretary met with me in the capacity of a public official running a part of the country, made a recommendation to me in the most innocent of way, and withheld from me the fact that it was the intention of the Assembly to take action against the person that they interdicted in the way I have just described. I am very disappointed in my Tobago colleague and colleagues because I have gone out of my way to ensure that no accusation could be truthfully made that the government that I lead has done anything other than to facilitate the Assembly. So, when I heard the Deputy Chief Secretary, interestingly enough, the person speaking to the public in Tobago on this matter is the Deputy Chief Secretary. The Chief Secretary has gone 40 of ways describing this problem as one that has to do with the Prime Minister. Because it is easy in Tobago, when you get yourself in difficulty of competence or incompetence, you just blame Trinidad or blame the Prime Minister. I will have none of it. I've gone beyond the call of duty to ensure that no truthful allegation could be made against my office or against me with respect to the people of Tobago. And to listen to the Deputy Chief Secretary explaining that they can't do this and they can't do that in Tobago. The reason why there's no Chief Administrator is because of the actions of the Tobago, and who claim to use the results of the audit against a senior public servant. And I refuse to believe that when the Chief Secretary spoke to me on that day, an hour and a half he spoke, that he did not know that what he was doing at the level of the Chief Secretary was interdicting the officer who was in line to be the next post and putting somebody else up to me for my agreement. I find that deceitful, I find it disappointing, and I take note of the fact that not everybody who claim to be what they are is what they say they are.
And of course, Dr. Rowley is the classic example. You are not what you claim to be, Rowley. You're a blasted thief. You are a rapscallion. You are a devil in human form. You are a man in mental, cognitive, and intellectual decline. You're mad like hell. And of course, Tobago was supposed to be in line to be the next chief accounting officer. And Farley did not want that. And that person ended up having to answer for misbehavior in public office under investigation by the Public Service Commission. And the only reason Rowley is annoyed is because the election of the president put a PNM activist in the office because he didn't get his way. He was mad and furious because he wants his way. He believes that the office of Prime Minister is a dictatorial office, and that he must have his way because he is us. That what Rowley has been saying, that there is a good relationship between himself and the THA, is far, far, far from it. Far, far from it. And that he is most annoyed because he cannot get his way, and he only Tobago East and Tobago West because he knows that he cook. He knows that his ass is grass. He knows that once he loses those 2 seats, with 22 seats, it's 20, and of course the UNC will certainly pick up more than 19 seats for sure in Trinidad. That's for sure. I am advocating 26 to 28 seats in Trinidad as far as the UNC is concerned. Let's continue with Dr. Rowley's so-called hypocritical and contradictory love for Tobagonians. Tobago tonight is your night, and you must, of course, have this indelibly implanted in your minds that when you go to the polls, nothing must be in your mind about the PNM. And if there is something in your mind, it's about rid of them once and for all and relegating them to the dustbin of political history in this country.
This has been a remarkable 24 hours.
Yes, I can imagine.
In case you all don't understand what I've done, I intend to write the UN and to write the NU and to write the...
Farley said he will do when, of course, he's accused Rowley, the Commissioner of Police, and, of course, elements in Tobago, PNM elements in Tobago, of attempting to undermine his administration, slipshod activities, bringing in the police to investigate and so on, to intimidate, as he mentioned earlier. That is what. So he is most annoyed because Farley has the capacity to respond, and he is in control and large and in charge of the Tobago House of Assembly. Rowley can't take that, so he says it's a remarkable 24 hours, and that he is reciting what Farley say he will do. And if I was Farley, I would have done the same damn thing. You cannot come and send police to investigate and absolving yourself and say no, but it's not Tobago police, it's Trinidad police that was sent down. And we already know that, of course, he took retired police officers who he knows that will give him a report that he wants and send them into the police service to, of course, investigate a former commissioner. Yes, Gary Griffith, in terms of issuance of firearms license. Yes, he want dirt on him so he could justify his unjust attack and belittling of that man. But he dig a hole for himself because the judge say that act was illegal. You cannot take the position that you are head of the National Security Council and feel you could put a team together to go and investigate the police. The police has the constitutional authority to investigate itself, no one else. You can't put the police inside it to do it. You're a damn fool. You did so much evil that now it is now ricocheting. It is now boomeranging on him.
Oh yes, and right. So he is not content to breach our laws. He is not content to misconduct himself in Tobago, in the assembly. He thinks that we are all stupid. So we will sit here and have him unfettered in his quest, in righteous indignation, to tell the world that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service had the temerity to investigate him. Took him 3 weeks to come before the media and answer, or attempt to answer. That matter is still...
I want you to know, of course, I have to intervene, yes. I want you to know that he's seeing others that which is in him, and he don't like it. Let the police investigate Rowley, and you'll see what will happen. As you saw with Gary Griffith, his investigation he was under with the fake oil. And he don't want that, so he got rid of Gary Griffith constructively by his 3 years. Patient to do evil. That is the man. So Farley doing him the same thing that he do others and would have done Farley, and he most annoyed. Take it in your cocoon and eat it.
Not answered. It is the investigation by the police, which is a continuation of that matter. There's an ongoing investigation, but he's going to write the UN and write the OECS. He learned that from Kamala Prasad Bisesa. Who don't understand the implication of suborn testimony. Go in the dictionary and look for the meaning of suborn. It's a Latin word. It has 2 parts. You know, there was a time when you go to school in Trinidad and Tobago, you used to learn Latin, right? And I did. Yeah? So I could tell you, it means, you know, to furnish. It means to get in secret. And you get it, you initiate it. And the man tell you.
We know about suborn testimony, Rowley. It was you and Al-Rawi and your cabinet who got a similar testimony from Vincent Nelson, yes, to set up Anand Ramlogan and Ramdeen. We know you know. But because you are the victim now, because they got a whistleblower to say that you pay them in order to undermine the THA, and you only focus on that 2 seats in Tobago that you will lose ultimately, you're most annoyed. You are, of course, in a state of irascibility. Well, I tell you me, you better take your mind off of them 2 seats in Tobago. You better. And in Trinidad, because as Jack Warner said, Kamala will control Trinidad, Fali, Tobago, and since the country is Trinidad and Tobago, you will get the and somewhere the Bocas in between.
He taped the man without the man's knowledge. Even when the Romans had Latin as their language, they didn't think that suborn could have been so fitting to an action. Because they had no tapes in those days where you could tape the person, if that is true. But there are a lot of questions here that ought to arise and to be followed by the police in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, and he said he didn't do anything about that.
Beyond the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, you do so at your peril. Yesterday in the assembly was a classic example of persons believing the nonsense that they were talking. I don't know what the evidence will. I don't know what's going to
man.
This is an ongoing process right now. This is an ongoing matter in Trinidad and Tobago, and it is not only about me personally. It is a governance issue now.
Yeah, right.
And of course, I have my advisors, and so does he. I don't know what his advisors told him to do, but he's done that, and I think that we got a problem.
Well, in a while you will see where Rowley, in that particular outburst, thought that he could have stymied and maybe bring legal action against Fali for making those accusations in the House of Assembly, forgetting that he, Rowley, brought fake emails into the Parliament and under parliamentary privilege protection, he disclosed information that otherwise would have caused him, if it was outside, to be charged for treason, for trying to, of course, accuse a sitting prime minister of murder, conspiracy to murder. Well, Fali doing the same thing under the protection of the House of Assembly, and he now trying to change the law by saying Fali is not protected as how he was in the Parliament. The damn fool. He don't believe that Robinson was that stupid not to give, of course, the House of Assembly similar protection for its assemblymen as that of Trinidad and the National Parliament. That fool. You know, afterwards, he started to talk about the going after the whistleblower now. Listen to him. He gone mad.
This has been a remarkable 24 hours.
Our leader promised you whistleblower legislation as the first item of business.
To provide whistleblower protection. Say, I know today, as central authority, why the United National Congress is so mortified at passing whistleblowing protection law, because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, quite simply, somebody have serious cocoa in the sun. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Madam Speaker, saying that this piece of legislation, when passed, will put an end to corruption, or will change society in a way that corruption will never occur in our society. But what it will do, Madam Speaker, it will afford the society an opportunity to respond in some significant way, to discourage the instances, to preserve those who will not participate in corruption.
He said an act.
Now, he's a whistleblower lover. He promoted whistleblowing legislation. Wait. You'll see in a while. And that he has been transformed. He has been metamorphosized. Yes, he had a bout of total transformation on that matter, simply because he was at the receiving end of a whistleblower revelation in Tobago, all the time thinking that about them 2 seats in Tobago that he will eventually and inevitably and certainly lose. Yes, he has mutated now to an anti-whistleblower advocate. Watch him, that beast in human form.
The police said to you, if you see something, say something. This legislation is saying to the population, if you know something, say something, and we as a people will fight corruption and we will be all better off.
I have issued a pre-action protocol to the so-called whistleblower who has participated in the creation of this monstrous lie implicating me in serious criminal conduct.
I thought he liked whistleblowing all the time.
Consulted my legal advisors.
Yes,
a pre-action protocol has been issued to this person. I would approach the court on it. The Chief Secretary clearly has difficulty in respecting his elders, and he will very soon learn that he will have to respect his betters. To give me advice of not knowing the Tobago House of Assembly Act, you who have just put your toe in the water and just come into the public domain, is a kind of arrogance that is unbecoming of somebody in whose so much was, expected of. So for this little upstart to be getting up and getting on the way he's getting on, and comparing what I did in the parliament as justification for what he's done, and being egged on by people who should know better, that's part of the problem in this country. And that is why I'm going to sue the person who lied on me.
Let me hear that part again.
Very clear. And a pre-action protocol has been issued to this person. I would approach the court on it. The Chief Secretary clearly has difficulty in respecting his elders, and he will very soon learn that he will have to respect his betters. To give me advice of not knowing the Tobago House of Assembly Act, you who have just put your toe in the water and just come into the public domain, is a kind of arrogance that is unbecoming of somebody in whose so much was, expected of. So for this little upstart to be getting up and getting on the way he's getting on, and comparing what I did in the parliament as justification for what he's done, and being egged on by people who should know better, that's part of the problem.
So he mustn't do what you did, you see? Because he's seen others, that which is in him, and when he get a taste of his own medicine, in this case, of course, a very bitter medicine, because it impacts on what we already knew. It only added to what we already know, and that is to say Dr. Rowley is an evil specimen of inhumanity, and that he is prepared, of course, as a political, I wouldn't even say bulwark, but as a political avarice, as a political cover, as a political vulture, is prepared, of course, to pick at any carcass that has any political value as far as he is concerned. And like what Manning would have said, he like a mongrel. In Laventil, we call it a shitong. He biting at every or running after every car. Well, that is Rowley today, because he got the bitter medicine, the bitter pill, the bitter boya that he, of course, has meted out to others, and he can't take it. And let me tell you this, when he gets out of office and the avalanche of issues surrounding his misconduct, his corruption, his nepotism, his cronyism, his maladministration, his misbehavior in public office, his rank and unadulterated larceny, as he of course wallow and maybe console his kleptocratic team when Kamala Prasad Bisesa, the UNC takes over, incidentally, of course, we will play Kamala tomorrow. I don't think we have time this evening. We have started pretty early, but of course, I thought it was important, of course, to make certain that we are here. And of course, as you see, I am energized because I got an extra 2 days somewhere far, where, of course, I have, as I made the analogy earlier, I am now rehydrated, having been, of course, in the desert, being, of course, becoming dehydrated
in this country. And that is why I'm going to sue the person who lied on me.
You like
I
Mr. Bloss again?
Very clear.
Listen to him now.
Subsequent to the election in Tobago, which brought about a change of administration, as the senior politician in the country, my party was defeated in Tobago, summarily dismissed from office after 2 decades of service.
You accept that.
And I personally led the government's response to the transition in Tobago. I personally led that. The very first thing I did was to go to Tobago with a large delegation of ministers, a number of key ministers, Attorney General, Minister of Finance, Minister of Works, Minister of Tourism, and invited this new administration, which was full of young people, all of them inexperienced, invited them to sit down and assisted them with how the ministries function and what is required from the central government, what is required from them. And we spent half a day together, quietly and civilly, doing that for the transition, for the benefit of the people of Tobago. Subsequent to that, I gave instructions at the level of the cabinet that there are people who from time to time will seek to bait you into confrontation with the Tobago House of Assembly. No minister of this government is to get into any confrontation with anybody in the Tobago House of Assembly or its administration.
Only you.
If there are difficulties, difficulties will be identified and will be dealt with in a civil and authorized manner.
You are not the boss of me nor this island.
Tell him, Farley, tell him.
And so, Mr. Prime Minister, yes, it's correct that you are Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, but you are not Prime Minister of the Tobago House of Assembly. As a matter of fact, from the time you reach #1 Jerningham Street, your authority ends by the gate.
Notwithstanding the public utterances from the Minister of Finance and his Tobagonian colleagues in the Parliament, as mentioned earlier, the calculations reveal that the THA is owed a total of 166.4 million in approved parliamentary allocation that have not been transferred to the THA. Madam Presiding Officer, the time for futile talking has expired. We are now at an advanced stage in our preparation for two things. One, legal action, and two, preparation of the complaint to invoke the jurisdiction of the Dispute Resolution Commission.
I gave instructions at the level of the cabinet. No minister of this government is to get into any confrontation with anybody in the Tobago House of Assembly or its administration. No minister of this government is to get into any confrontation with anybody in the Tobago House of Assembly or its administration.
Yes, indeed. But, of course, we know it's a blatant and unadulterated lie. People, we have come to the end, of course. Don't forget, of course, share. I know that things are not perfect, but we will get there. We will get there. Just a matter of time. Of course, it was a pleasure doing it for you. I had something from Kamala Prasad Bisesa, but I think I better leave that as a standalone because with that level of dotishness, that level of stupidity, that level of illusion and delusion, and of course that level of doing as I say but don't do as I do, and Rowley, when he get a taste of his own medicine, seemed to be in a state of what I consider to be absolute flummox and confusion. We don't want to confuse that with what the sober and rational and out of the box thoughts and disposition of Kamla Prasad Bisesa and the UNC. I know that tonight they would have had, of course, their Monday night forum that has started back. But don't forget, of course, that tomorrow morning, in spite of the false start this morning on the ground report, we will, of course, be in full cry tomorrow. We have ironed out some of the technical issues, but just as anywhere else, you will have a level of disturbance, hopefully not so frustrating that people will be disincentivized to, of course, have patience. So have some patience and things will turn out. Don't forget, once again, that tomorrow morning, the ground report, Andy, Mike, and myself from 6 to 9. And, of course, we return here tomorrow night from 8 o'clock when we will continue, of course, with this and other topics. I know, Tobagonians, you are now not only emboldened further, but you are refreshed and you are bolstered by, of course, the reality and that the justification for your rejection of the PNM continues, of course, to loom large, and Trinidad must now follow suit as we get rid of this albatross, this group of kleptocrats who have commandeered our government and has undermined our democracy and, of course, the rule of law, and infiltrate institutions such as the EBC, which, of course, is you would see that tomorrow, for example, I'll present you with a 1,000-page document that is supposed to address the crime and criminality, not necessarily in Laventille, but focus there, but of course to be replicated in other so-called crime hotspots as identified by the police and as we know it to be across the country, whether it be in the north, whether it be in central or south of the country, or indeed in Tobago. That being as it may, have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. We are unable, of course, to recognize those persons who are there, but who have been online. I missed that aspect of it, but say what, we have to give up something for something. Don't forget, we are on YouTube. We are on, of course, Facebook, and we upload things on Twitter as well. And pretty soon, of course, we will be on the other platforms where we should have a presence in order to spread the gospel of the East-West corridor, Trinidad and Tobago, and the evil that has beautifully. I think we should feel the party. Yes, indeed.
Stop all housework you're doing. Tonight we go in and have some fun. So you'll be free to move around. Come on, hold on to your man, and let me do a little. Oh, with worries by the doorsteps. But that tonight we have no time. We gon' deal with that tomorrow. Tonight we going out and line. We gon' do a little soca. We gon' do a little grind. We gon' do a little back. And show them youngsters how to wine. Tonight the black man feeling the party. Tonight I'm feeling the jam. Tonight the man just feels the boogie. Come on, hold on to your man. And let we do a little